Time for the Grade 1 Shadwell Turf Mile.
And they're off in the $1 million Shadwell Turf Mile. Wise Dan breaks last, and Silver Max goes right out for the early lead. Silver Max quickly to the front in the opening strides as per usual. Opens up by 2.5 lengths at the entry to the first turn. And Syed will go second as they move around the turn with Grand Arch in third. Optimizer fourth toward the inside. Long Shot 2 Notch Road in fifth on the outside. Wise Dan has picked up 2 positions in the opening quarter mile. Moves up from last now into the 6th spot down toward the rail, just over 5 lengths from the front. Keigan behind him, and Seek again the trailer. The opening quarter in 24 2/5 seconds. Silver Max the leader by a length and a half up the backstretch. Syed now just off the leader's flank in second, 3/4 of a length. Grand Arch third up on the outside. Optimizer tucked away fourth against the rail. 2 Notch Road in the clear in fifth. Wise Dan is sixth in between horses, still 4.5 lengths from the leader. Gap of 2 to Keigan next to last, and Seek again content to trail through an opening half mile in 48 1/5 seconds. And Silver Max the leader into the final turn, leads it by a length and a half. Syed is second, 3/4 of a length with Grand Arch to the outside third. Optimizer fourth. 2 Notch Road is fifth, and now Wise Dan looks for running room, but he's still sixth between horses. 6 lengths off the lead, a quarter mile to come, and they've all got to catch Silver Max, who's chased by Syed. Then Grand Arch. Wise Dan comes down the outside. The leader coming to the 8th pole. Here's Syed alongside of Silver Max. Grand Arch. Seek again diving to the rail. Keigan coming late. Wise Dan far outside. Wise Dan coming after Syed and Grand Arch. Wise Dan gets his head in front. The first $1 million race in Keeneland history. The Shadwell Turf Mile to Wise Dan with a breathtaking stretch rally.
Too much class, too much talent, too much heart. Champion Wise Dan, his second career victory in the Grade 1 Shadwell Turf Mile.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't the way I drew it up. I'm sure it wasn't the way John Velasquez drew it up. But this is what good horses, great horses, do. Even he turned his head at the start. He was last going into the first turn. We'll take a look at the start in just a second. But because of that start, he was last going into the first turn. He picked his way, John picked his way through horses down the backside, angled him out 4 or 5 wide, turning for home, and he was still able to run him down. Here we go at the start.
He missed the break. You don't see this very often from Wise Dan. He typically gets a good jump out of there, but just as Jerry said, he had his head turned at the start. He's already a length behind the horses around him, and he's dead last early. If this was not the Wise Dan that we're accustomed to seeing, if he's lost a step at age 7, this is the race where he gets beat. I think he's just as good now as he's ever been.
You know, the margin of victory will show about a length and a quarter, but really he was probably 5 lengths better than these horses because of what happened at the break, because of going wide as a consequence of having to weave his way through horses, not getting a good spot down the backside. Very, very good race.
He simply refuses to lose, Wise Dan. Down to Nick Luck.
Charlie Lopresti is shaking next to me. Tears in your eyes, Charlie. This is a horse of a lifetime. Extraordinary. What were you thinking?
You know, his head was turned sideways, and he missed a break a little bit, but that's what happened to him in Breeders' Cup last year. He stumbled, you know, and I was a little worried down the backside. I mean, you know, Silver Max got a slow quarter up front. I thought, man, somebody's got to go. And he's just an incredible horse. I mean, he's just incredible. That's all I can say. Thank God.
The heart that he showed halfway up the stretch was extraordinary.
I know, and, you know, that's what it... You know, everybody says, well, he hasn't done enough, and I don't know, you know, what else they want this horse to do. I mean, he won off of colic surgery last time carrying, you know, I mean, they spotted him 11 to 13 pounds, and he's just an incredible horse.
I know you've got to let the dust settle, but I must ask you the question. Could he end up in the Breeders' Cup Classic rather than the mile?
You know, I'll leave it up to Mr. Fink. The way he trained on the dirt here, the way he ran today, this is the kind of race that I wanted for him. If they ran 35 and change over a good turf, I'll just leave it up to the boss, but I wouldn't be afraid to run him anywhere. As long as he comes back good. You know, he's 7 years old, or how many races he has left. Maybe now's the time to do it.
We've all enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Donna.
John Velasquez just said to Wise Dan, what were you doing at the starting gate? So tell us, John, what about the slow break?
I don't know, he just threw the hit to the opposite side and the door's open, so he got surprised. The door's open. He didn't break very good, and now I'm a little concerned because I'm going to be behind horses that are slower than he's supposed to be, though, you know. And I was hoping that he'd settle going to the first turn, so I kind of let him run a little bit to the first turn where I get a nice position, trying to slow him down behind the horses, and finally I thought I got him. And the whole way down the back stretch, I was just worried that he don't clip heels because he was pretty strong. But on the other hand, I was kind of and the heels on the horse on the outside. I said, just buddy, be easy, easy, easy. Finally had to get him back in the 5-16 pole and go around everybody, and he responded right away.
Yeah, John, it wasn't his customary position, so obviously gave cause to a lot of people to worry about him. Were you ever worried that he was going to be able to unleash that rally?
Well, I wasn't worried about that. What I was worried about is how I was going to get him behind the horses, like get settled behind the horses. That's what I was worried about. So like now he's behind a lot of horses he's not supposed to be behind, and he get pretty strong as well. But once I got him behind him, and halfway the backstretch, he settled. He was strong, but he settled really well. I wasn't worried about then. You know, when I pull it out, he was there for me.
All right, I have to ask you the tough question. This is obviously a win in race for the Breeders' Cup Mile on turf, but Nick Luck just asked Charlie Lopresti any shot at going to the Classic. Charlie's left the door open. What are your thoughts on Classic versus turf?
You know what? I just think he's a lot easier in the mile race. Going a mile and a quarter, they might go a little bit faster, but I think he's a little harder. I think he just can do it. I'm not going to say that, no, but I think it's a little bit easier for him in the grass. He's much better in the grass.
It's nice when it's easy to win $1 million race on grass, right, John?
Exactly. You got to take it when they give it to you.
Well done. Go celebrate.
The richest race in the history of Keeneland. This $1 million Shadwell Turf Mile won by Wise Dan. And what a moment that will be come Breeders' Cup weekend, whether it's the mile or the Classic for John Velasquez. Again, he was injured early on in the Breeders' Cup program last year. He didn't ride after the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies in a hospital while Jose Lezcano piloted Dan to victory.
Now, Wise Dan, as we talk about the potential for the Breeders' Cup Classic and get one more look at this remarkable stretch run here, he is 1 for 5 lifetime on dirt. But he's almost certainly a much better horse now than he was when he ran in those dirt races. Charlie Lopresti has said in the past that he wouldn't hesitate to run Wise Dan on dirt. He said it last year even. But the owner, Mort Fink, has always been very conservative in the way he wants this horse handled. And he's the one that really has refused to run the horse in the Breeders' Cup Classic and in major dirt races. His thought has always been, why would I run him on a surface that's not absolutely his best surface?
It's, according to John Velasquez, we just heard, it's not only the surface, it's the pace of the race. The longer the race, the slower the pace, the more unlikely Wise Dan is to settle going a mile and a quarter, which is something he would have to do in order to be effective for the last quarter of a mile of the added distance. So it's not just the surface, it's the way the race unfolds.
Express bet results are in. Wise Dan covering the mile, 135-3. I will say, Randy, owner breeder Morton Fink, while accepting his Eclipse Award trophy and Horse of the Year hardware last January, did allude to the fact that he might leave the door open, that he might be open to running Wise Dan.
Well, we'll see.
On dirt eventually.
If he does it, there's nothing wrong with going for a three-peat in the Breeders' Cup Mile.
Two-time Breeders' Cup Mile winner. Next stop, either the Breeders' Cup Mile or North America's richest horse race, the Breeders' Cup Classic. The fist pump from Hall of Fame